Hey guys, I wanted to address a couple of issues I read about when I was looking into buying this Simpson ALH3228-S. This guy. Part number 60735. First issue is, does it come with enough oil? The answer is kind of no, it doesn't. It says right here in the Honda Owner's Manual that the engine oil capacity for this GX200 engine, which is what I have, is 0.6 liters. Look at the bag. The bag of oil that they give you says 473 milliliters or 0.473 liters. So no, there's not enough oil in this bag to fill the engine. But that would be if the engine is completely empty, and I don't think that they completely drain every drop of oil out of this thing. Either that or this Honda spec is wrong, because when I put this bag of oil in, it was the perfect amount. It was exactly right, even though it's not the spec for a completely empty engine. It apparently is the perfect amount for this brand new pressure washer when you buy it. So you just basically open up the oil dipstick tube and put this bag of oil in every drop. And I'm telling you, it's the perfect amount. You couldn't put one more drop of oil in this engine. Now, the next question is, how do you check the oil? That's really interesting, because I have one dude that I read about said, you don't put the dipstick in and screw it in. You just push the dipstick in the hole and check the oil. And I thought, well, that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. But it turns out he was right. It says right here. Where is it? With the engine in the level position, fill with the recommended oil to the upper limit mark, which is the bottom edge of the oil fill hole. And I'm sorry, I thought it was right here that it said it. Here we go, oil level check. Remove the oil filler cap, wipe it clean, insert the oil fill cap / dipstick into the engine oil filler neck as shown, but do not screw it in. Then remove it to check the oil level. If the oil's right, whatever. So he's right. You don't do that. You just basically tape the dipstick, line it up with the hole, push it in till it's flush, pull it back out, and check it. And because the dipstick is going to be on an angle, you're going to have, I dripped on my towel. You're going to have oil at a little bit of an angle. But in my case, with this thing completely full, the amount of oil on the dipstick was up to right here. There's an angled line right there. That's about the 3/4 mark on this stick, and it's kind of angled from 3/4 to 7/8 or something like that. So kudos to the guy that said you don't check this the traditional way. You just stick the dipstick in, but don't screw it in. He was right. And I don't even know why they bother with a dipstick, because when they say that you're supposed to fill it to that position, that is also basically to the upper limit mark on the dipstick, which is the bottom edge of the oil fill hole on the dipstick. And when you look at the bottom edge of the oil fill hole in their diagram, it is basically the bottom of the threaded hole. So with the amount of oil that came from Simpson, look at there, the oil's all the way up practically to the last thread. I don't think you could put 10 more drops of oil in this motor without it dripping out. So they did include the correct amount of oil. So way to go, Simpson. And the guy was right about how you check the oil. You just stick it in until you bottom it out without threading the stick in. But like I said, why even bother to do it that way? Because all you have to do is just fill it up till it's ready to run out, and that's the correct amount. And if the dipstick is removed from the hole, you couldn't overfill it if you tried, because any amount higher than this would run out. So If you don't want to mess with the dipstick, or your eyes aren't that good and you can't see it or whatever, just fill her up until it's about ready to run out and you're good. So that covers whether or not it came with enough oil. Yes, it did, even though it kind of makes you think that it didn't. That's how you check the oil. And then the last thing I have to complain about or talk about is the throttle. And I got two things for you there. The first is, how much throttle do you give it when you're starting the engine? Well, according to the owner's manual, 1/3. You give it 1/3 throttle from the minimum. So 1/3 throttle, that's where you're supposed to start the thing. And then once it's running, then you can adjust it as desired. The other thing that I don't like about this is, one guy complained that you could rip your hand open when you tried to start the engine on the throttle thing, and he's kind of right. That's not the dullest throttle lever. It's got a little bit of a rolled but sharp edge. And if you're kind of careless, yeah, you could rip the back of your knuckles on that thing a little bit, sure. I think that maybe they could stand to put a better throttle lever on there, and Honda could do an improved job there. The other thing that I really don't like is it is stiff. I mean, it is like, I can do it with one hand, but it's not fun, and you can't really control where it ends up because it's so stiff to move it. Maybe that thing will break in. Maybe I need to give it a shot of WD-40. I don't know. But that's kind of not the quality I would have expected from Honda. I would have thought this thing would be kind of buttery smooth and yet work perfect, and it's not buttery smooth. So Honda, maybe maybe you can work on a little bit of an improvement with that. This is the top linkage that you're actually moving when you move the throttle, and it looks like it's sealed and marked with some kind of blue tape or blue paint to indicate it was torqued correctly, I'm sure. But whatever, that thing is that thing's pretty stiff, Honda. You could do better, and you could also do better by either shortening this a little tiny bit or putting a, you know, maybe a cap that was plastic or rubber and had a bigger ability to grab onto. Maybe you could move that more fluidly, even with the same amount of torque on the nut. Plus, not rip your hand open when you try to throttle it. So definitely make sure when you go to start this thing, you kind of preload the thing that far away before you give it a jerk, and then pull, and that will get you clear of it, because you're just taking up the slack to this point. You're not going to start from the very bottom anyway. That's not what they tell you to do. They tell you to pull it until it's tight and then give it a pull, and at that point you're far away from the lever. So if you're doing it right, that won't really be a problem anyway. But I would say that in the hurry of things, you could scratch yourself up a little bit with that, sure. So that could be improved. That's it. That's all the rumors I can think of that I read about when I researched buying this thing. The stuff that I thought might be a concern. I hope you guys find this video useful. Have a good day.